Torah portion is Korach, and Korach, what I'd like to do today is first just read a few of the psukim to remind us of the incidents that happened. And after we read some of the psukim to remind us of the rebellion, I'd like to look at, if we have time, Rashi's understanding of what caused this rebellion, what was the rebellion about. Then Ramban's, a very classic approach. Ramban contains within it the Ibn Ezra's approach also, which Ramban rejects. And then after that, we can look, if we have time, at Rabbi Soloveitchik's approach. And after that, if we have time, we could look at Rabbi Volbe's approach to what caused this rebellion. Rebellion is something that we need to understand. We need to understand the roots of rebellion. And it's something that's, I guess, very common. Every generation, there's a rebellion, usually, of some sort. So what's the story here? So first, let's look at the first few psukim to really just remind ourselves of the story. Vayikach Korach, Korach took the son of Yitzhar, the son of Gahas, the son of Levi. That was his name. And Datan Aviram, the sons of Eliab, and Om ben Pelas, the sons of Reuven. And they got up before Moses. Moshe, Korach had with him 250 men, Nisiyei Eda, princes of the community. Kriyei Moed Anshe Shem. These were all people who are summoned for the meeting, men of renown. If you think about it, 250 men of renown, you can imagine, like, this is not an insignificant rebellion. These are 250 distinguished people, and this was not a huge community. You have to figure that it was, let's say there was the 600,000 men between the ages of 20 to 60. So 250 men means they had pretty much, it seems like they dominated. The elite were all with Korach, these 250 men of renown. Yes.
Rabbi, what year, around when was this supposed to have happened?
Okay, so let me get to that. Where there's a dispute when exactly this took place. That's going to be a dispute. So let's see exactly when this happened, because that's, of course, incredibly relevant. And we'll see that that's a dispute between Ramban and Ibn Ezra. And they gathered on Moses and Aaron, and they said to them, and let's look at their arguments. One, Rav Lachem, you took too much for yourself, meaning to say that it's as though you've taken too much power. Everybody's holy. You've taken too much power for yourself. Everybody's holy. And amongst them is God. Why are you elevating yourself? You're too much power for yourself. That was the first argument. And when Moshe heard this, he fell on his face. And he said to Korach, I'm not going to read in the Hebrew here, I'm going to summarize. He says, in the morning you'll know what that God has chosen us. And so he tells them to take fire pans and put fire in the fire pans and put incense in it. And then the person who Hashem chooses, Hashem will let us know. And then Moshe continues. And for Moshe's continuing, we can see there might have been another argument. Moshe says to Korach, listen now, B'nai Levi, isn't it enough for you that you've been elevated amongst the rest of the congregation of Israel, that you serve God? And meaning to say, Korach, you should be satisfied that God has taken the Levites and you're elevated amongst them. He doesn't give this argument to all the 250 men, because all of those 250, not all of them were Levites. But he says this to Korach. He says, I don't understand why you want more. We've given you so much. And now you also want the kahuna. So now that's the verse. It says, Vikashtem gam kahuna. Korach is asking for the kahuna. Korach is asking not just to be a Levite. He wants to be the kahuna, because there had been a division of Aaron, who was from the tribe of Levi, from all the other people from the tribe of Levi. And Korach says, why does Aaron get to be a Kohen? I want to be a Kohen too. And then he says, therefore, you and the whole community, why are you complaining against Aaron? So according to this strata, this theme is the first one. We're saying that Korach was saying, all of you, why are you elevating yourselves amongst everybody? But we see from Moshe's response that Korach's argument was really about, why is Aaron better than the rest of the Levites? I'm a Levite too. And then Moshe calls Dasan and Aviram, and they said, we are not coming up. And why do they not come up? So they said, is it not enough that you let us out from the land of milk and honey to die in the wilderness? Now you also now want to rule over us? So now we see that Dasan and Aviram's argument is, and then they continue before we summarize our argument, say, you didn't even bring us into a land of milk and honey. You didn't even bring us into a land of milk and honey. You didn't give us this inheritance. Even if you would put out the eyes of those men, we shall not go up. So you see, Datan and Aviram's arguments, Datan and Aviram were from the tribe of Reuven, and their arguments were, first of all, we don't accept your authority at all. Korach was saying, I want to be the Kohen. Datan and Aviram were saying, we don't accept your authority at all. Not only that, you know why? You're a failure, Moses. You have not delivered on your promises. You had promised us that we're going to go into the land of milk and honey. You have promised us you're going to give us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Where's the promises that you've been promising us all these years, all this time? You haven't delivered. Empty promises. Where's the stuff you promised us on your campaign speech when you were telling us to leave Pharaoh? It's not here. And so this is another level of argument that was brought against Moshe. So we're seeing several levels, several layers, just to reiterate them. That first of all, their argument was everybody's holy. Why is Moshe and Aaron elevated above everybody else? Number two, why is Aaron specifically a Kohen and not Korach? Number three, Moshe didn't complete his promises. He didn't fulfill the promises he made about bringing them into the land of milk and honey and dividing up the land. And number four, so far it seems like Korach is that they're saying, Datan and Aviram are saying, why should we let you rule over us? What authority do you have over us at all? We challenge your complete authority. We're not going to go up. And Moshe was very upset about this, and he says to God, don't accept their argument, don't accept it. And then we'll see from Moshe's response that there was another argument that they had against him. And he says to them as follows. He says to them, hold on one second. Hold on, let me just find this pasuk. Hold on. So Moshe responds also, we could see another problem with their speech, that Moshe gets very upset after Datan and Aviram say this. Moshe gets very angry and he says to God, don't accept their offerings. We see now here a fifth argument. He says, Lo chamorachem mehem nasati, v'lo harioti et echad mehem. So Moshe has two things that he says that they're wrong about. He says, I never took anybody's donkey, and also I never wronged even one of them. We see from here two other arguments against Moses. First of all, they were arguing that he was maybe misappropriating communal funds, that he had taken a donkey for himself. And Moshe says, I never took anybody's donkey. So they challenged him of enriching himself. And number two was, they said that he had used his power to hurt them, because he says, I've never wronged any of them, even one of them. So we see from here a total of 6 possible arguments against Moshe. I'll just repeat them before we turn to Rashi. The first argument is that everybody's holy. Why does Moshe think he's holier than everybody else? Number two, that Korach says, that the second argument that Korach makes is, why is Aaron made a Kohen when really why is Aaron separated from all the other tribe of Levi? Why is Aaron the Kohen? Datan and Aviram then have arguments 3 and 4. They argue that you haven't delivered on your campaign promises. We're not in the land of Canaan. And number 4, we don't accept your authority at all. By what right do you have authority over us? And then from Moses' own words, we see arguments 5 and 6 that they accused him of stealing a donkey. And number 6, that they accused him of hurting them, that of maybe capriciously judging them and wronging them. So these are 6 arguments that Korach and his group bring against Moses. I'd like to look at how the commentaries understand this. Looking at Rashi, then Nachmanides, then Rabbi Soloveitchik, and then Rabbi Volbe. Let me just pause. If anybody has any questions about this, I'll be happy to address the questions. If I see any hands going up, no hands going up, then we'll just continue. Okay, so so in this context, okay, well, Bruce has a hand up. Okay, hold on one second. Yes, moving right along. See how Rashi looks at these arguments and actually introduces other possible motivations for the rebellion. So I just want to look at 2 or 3 Rashis that come up here to understand what was the rebellion. So first of all, Rashi says the big question the commentaries all struggle with is, it says Vayikach Korach took, and then where's the object? What did he take? What did Korach take? It's not clear. The verse never tells us specifically what he took. So Rashi says that the word Vayikach, Korach took, doesn't mean that he actually took something, but rather it means Lakach et atzmo etzad echad. He took himself into a position. He separated himself. So meaning to say he took himself and he took himself to one side. He separated himself from the community. And how did he do this? That Korach was fundamentally most upset about the kahuna, that he was objecting against the priesthood. So this is the first hint that Rashi favors this idea that Korach's rebellion was self-motivated, that he wants to be a priest. Why does his cousin Aaron get to dominate the priesthood? Priesthood is very prestigious. What was wrong with him? He had the ability to do it. And he also took with him, Rashi gives us another explanation. What does it mean? The first explanation is he took himself. The second explanation, Rashi says, is Davar acher vayikach Korach mashach rashei senhedriot shebehem b'dvarim. He took the elite, the heads of the Sanhedriot, the heads of the courts. He persuaded them with his words. Korach was a great orator. To stand up, can you imagine what it is to be able to lead a revolution against Moses and to convince all the elites to follow you? This is Moses. Moses who defeated Pharaoh. Moses who defeated the strongest empire of the time. Moses who led them out of the land. Moses who split the sea with God's help. Moses who brought down the manna in the wilderness, the 10 plagues. And he was able to convince everybody to come with him to challenge them. So he separated them by convincing them. So what was Korach's argument? Well, first Rashi says as follows: Ma ra'a Korach lachok Moshe. What did Korach see to dispute with Moses? What was the basis of his dispute? So Rashi says straight out, we had been focusing on his jealousy of Aaron. Rashi says straight out, Nitkaneh al Nesiutan shel Elitzaphan ben Uziel. Sheminuhu Moshe Nasi. So he was jealous of the fact that Moses had made Elitzaphan, the son of Uziel, to be the prince from the tribe of Levi. Now Korach was from the tribe of Levi. Moses and Aaron were from the tribe of Levi. Moses became basically the equivalent of the king of all of Israel. Aaron was his priest. And each tribe was entitled to a Nasi. So Moshe appointed Elitzaphan to be the Nasi, the prince from the tribe of Levi. Now Moses did this al pi hadibur. Moshe appointed him to be Nasi. This was straight from God. And Korach was upset about this. He said, Achi Abba Arbahayu. He said there were 4 brothers who were the son from the tribe of Levi, the son of Levi. Who were the 4 brothers? The 4 brothers were the 4 sons of Kahas. So there were 4 grandsons. Now Levi had 3 children, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. Kahas had four sons: Amram, Yitzhar, Chevron, and Amram, Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel. Amram was the first son. He took Natlu Shnei Vanav Gedula. His two sons, Moses and Aaron, they assumed greatness. Echad Melech, one became the king, and Echad Kohen Gadol, and the other one became the high priest. So Korach said, Mi ra'oi li Torah tashniya. So who should become the Nasi? Who's the next in line? Lo ani, it should be me, because I am the son of Yitzhar, Shehu Sheni Amram, because he is the second child. But instead Moshe appointed the Nasi, Elitzaphan, who was the son of Uziel, who was the youngest of all of them. I'll argue with him. So Korach was upset, according to Rashi, that he was not even given the title of prince of the tribe of Levi. So what did Korach do? Ahmad, what did Korach do? He stood up. Hamad v'kanas. He rose up and gathered together 250 Rashei Sanhedrin, together 250 heads of courts. Ruban mishevet Ruvain shchenav. He says most of them came from Ruvain, because Korach was his neighbor, was the tribe of Ruvain. V'heim Elitzur ben Shteur v'chaverav. They were Elitzur ben Shteur and his colleagues. V'chayotze bo. And he took these princes. And what was his argument? V'elbishan talitot. Korach dressed them all in cloaks, and the cloaks were shekulan techelas. The cloaks were entirely made out of this special techelas, which was the special garment which we just read in the last portion was supposed to be reserved for the fringes of the tzitzit, and also we read earlier was there much of the material of the temple was made from techelas, and the garments of the Kohen Gadol had techelas in them. It was a special material reserved for the most dignified, the most holy. And he said they came and they stood before Moses. They came before Moses and they said to him, Talit shakula techelas, a cloak which is entirely made out of techelas. Do you have to put tzitzis? Do you have to put fringes on this garment, or are you exempt? And Moshe said, you're obligated. And they began to laugh at him. They said, how is it possible that if you have a garment that's made out of entirely of a different material, you just need to put one string of the tchelos and that's sufficient? Now, if the entire garment is made out of tchelos, you also need to put a string? And so they challenged him. By the way, this image of the tchelos is very, very deep. And if we have time, we could discuss some theories why this was the argument. What does it represent? That Korach was attacking them specifically with this parable of the tchelos. But for now, I just want to point out that there was another argument, a seventh possible argument that was being raised against Moshe by Korach, and that was he was ridiculing the faith, ridiculing the laws that Moshe got, basically challenging the Torah and saying that these laws are foolish, they're not worthy for us to do, they don't make any sense, they're not logical. That's what Korach was doing based upon this midrash. Okay, let me just pause here, see if anybody has any questions about this. So let us look at Nachmanides, Ramban's approach to this story of what does it mean? What was the rebellion about? So what was this rebellion about? So Ramban is going to share Ibn Ezra's approach, and then Ramban comes back and shares his own approach. So Ibn Ezra is a commentary from the 11th century, early 12th century. So this is what the Ibn Ezra argument is, as quoted by Nachmanides in the 13th century. So he says, so Ibn Ezra writes, this goes back to a question people raised, Elaine raised, Bruce raised, when did this incident occur? So according to Ibn Ezra, this incident of Korach's rebellion occurred back when they were at Sinai, before they even left Sinai. Can you imagine the audacity, the chutzpah of this rebellion? But when did it take place? It took place in Parshas Ba'alotcha when the firstborn lost their rights and they were given to the Levites. It used to be that the firstborn were the ones who were the priests. They were the priestly class. But after the sin of the golden calf, when the Levites did not sin, God took away the rights. Moshe, via God, took away the rights of the firstborn, and gave them to the Levites. And then the Levites had the right to perform the service. So if that's the case, why would Korach be upset about that? But Korach wasn't upset. He was using it as an opportunity. He said he was using this as an opportunity to build up his rebellion base, to build up the base amongst people who maybe felt they were wrong. He took all these leaders, these firstborns, these 250 men were the firstborns. He said, this is not fair. I'm on your side. I'm one of you. It's not fair that my family is getting all the power. That's what Korach's arguments was. He said they thought the other men, these men, they said they said Moshe must have done this by himself. They didn't realize that God told him to do it, and they said Moshe just wants to elevate his brothers, and also the Gam of Nekachem Krovim Alav, and also Moshe was suspected because the Kahat, they had a special honor. Moshe's family from the subdivision within Levi of the Kahas, they were in charge of transporting the holiest garment, the holiest objects of the Mishkan. And he says, he gave his own family special honor. And also for the tribe of Levi, who were from his family. So therefore, this is how Korach incited all these firstborns and other people who thought that they should be in power. He incited them against Moses by saying, look, he's taking all his power for himself. And what about the Levites? How was he able to get Korach? How was Korach able to get the other Levites to join him? The Levites, he said, look, Moshe took away our power and gave it to Aaron and his brother. Means to say, even Ezra understood that the expression Rav Lachem B'nai Levi was that Korach was not the only Levite, but many Levites joined together with Korach. So the firstborns and the Levites were people whose power had been stripped from them and given to others. The firstborn's power was given to the Levites. The Levites' power was given to the Aaron, the priest. And so for this reason, Korach was able to manipulate the situation to his advantage. And so therefore why are Datan and Aviram joining? They weren't necessarily the firstborn, and they were from the tribe of Reuven. So he says, V'kasher Datan v'Aviram b'avor shehesir ha'bechurim liReuven avim, because also Reuven had a claim to be the firstborn. That was the eldest tribe. So therefore, this is another reason. Good afternoon. That was another reason why they were joining together. And also he says, even Ezra says, Korach was also firstborn. So we see from here that there were all of these reasons why they rebelled. So just to summarize what Ibn Ezra was saying, the rebellion happened at Sinai before they had gone out into the wilderness. What was the rebellion about? These people losing their power and their authority, that the firstborn were upset. The trigger was when the Levites took over the responsibilities of the firstborn, and when Aaron took over the responsibilities of the firstborn. Firstborn were upset that the power went to the Levites. The Levites were upset the power went to Aaron. The tribe of Reuben was upset that their power went to the Levites. And for all these reasons, Korach was able to bring together this coalition of the people who felt that they had been stripped of their power and raise a voice against Moshe Rabbeinu. Let me stop here and make sure people have no questions on this. Anybody have any questions? So Ramban is going to reject what Ibn Ezra says, and his argument is, first and foremost, most logically, says it's out of order. We just read the incident of the spies. Why do we want to now say that this story happened before the spies? there's a chronology to the way the Torah is written. It's written in order. Now, even Ezra has an approach where he says, Ein mukta mumucha b'Torah. He says that the Torah can be written out of order. Nachmanides, generally speaking, rejects that unless there's very, very strong reason to accept it. But generally speaking, he says, no, we have to assume that the Torah was written in chronological order. And so therefore, we have to assume that this incident happened after the spies. Whereas even Ezra says, this incident must have happened before the incident of the spies, because the rebellion must have been motivated by the firstborn losing their rights. So therefore, Ramban says this is what happened. Ramban writes, as has been discussed, has been raised several times here, this incident happened after the sin of the spies in the Kadesh Barnea wilderness, after the sin of the spies. And what was the basis for the explanation? Shekaz Korach al-Nasiut Elitzafan. As we say, Pake Rashi, and he follows Rashi's approach, that the impetus here was that Korach was upset at Moshe for elevating Elitzafan to be the Nasi of the tribe of Levi, instead of Korach being the Nasi of the tribe of Levi. And also, he was jealous of Aaron, like Moshe said, because Shem Gam Kahuna, you have also requested the Kahuna. And also, he says, now this is what's a little bit tricky, that why are Datan and Aviram also joining together with Korach? Not about the firstborn, because Ibn Ezra says that Datan and Aviram were upset that they also weren't the firstborn. But if that's the case, why are they rebelling against Moshe? They should have rebelled against Jacob, because Jacob was the one who took it away from them. But rather, what was their argument? Their argument was, as Korach says explicitly, as they said, as Datan and Aviram said explicitly, you didn't follow through on your campaign promises. You're taking us to die in the wilderness, and it's not a land of milk and honey. So then Korach asks a fundamental question. The Ramban asks a fundamental question against Korach. Well, if Korach was upset about the fact that Elitzafan was made the Nasi and Aaron was made the Kohen Gadol, this happened much earlier. This didn't happen now. So why are these arguments being brought up now? They happened much earlier. So he says the following: Minei Yisrael biotam bar Sinai lo eroem shum ra'ah. So he said, basic argument is, when they were in the Sinai wilderness, Moshe was impregnable. He was flying high. His popularity was high. They had nothing that they could argue about. They had the golden calf, but how many people died in the golden calf? It was just 3,000. And Moshe, in fact, saved all the people. The people sinned with the golden calf. Moshe went up after the golden calf for another 40 days and 40 nights just to save them from being destroyed. Actually went up 80 days and 80 nights to save them. How are they going to touch Moshe then? Moshe was at his all-time peak of popularity while they're sitting there at the Sinai, at the Mount Sinai. Korach couldn't bring everybody in to get him then. He had to wait for his time to lead the rebellion, to lead the coup against Moshe. It was too early to attack him while they were in the Sinai desert. And so he says he saw that the people loved Moshe, like they loved themselves. The Shomimo Elav Kasher Yitzav. They saw when they were in the Sinai wilderness, he had no chance. No chance. The defenses around Moshe were so strong. And this is what. So he said, if there would be a person who would rebel against Moses at that time, they would have stoned him. It's interesting here that when Korach leads this rebellion, nobody says anything. Nobody stands up for Moshe. Nobody stands up for Moshe. Moshe's on his own. Moshe and Aaron. Nobody's standing up for them. Where's everybody else? If this had happened while they were in the Sinai wilderness, then they would have stood up for Moshe. People would have stood up for him. But here, there's nobody standing up for him. And so therefore, Ramban says, Saval Korach Keduat Aaron. Korach endured the promotion of Aaron. He endured it. And the firstborn of Israel endured the elevation of the Levites the Kol Masa of Moshe. They endured it, but they were seething. They were waiting patiently for their chance. But when they came to the Paran wilderness, and then there was they complained, they asked for meat, they were burnt at the Tavera fire, and they died after in Kivrota Ta'ava. And then the spies sinned, and Moshe did not pray for them after the sinning of the spies. Moshe didn't pray for total forgiveness at that point. The Ramban explains this earlier. Moshe didn't pray for total forgiveness. He accepted this punishment that they're going to die in the wilderness for 40 years. They were upset. You're supposed to be our advocate. And so they got a bad deal. Moshe got a bad treaty with God after the sin of the spies. They were very upset about that. And so it says, and all the tribal leaders, the spies, they died in a plague before Hashem. And all the people were decreed that they were going to die in the wilderness. Then the people were very bitter. Everybody was very bitter. Very bitter. They didn't like the situation. Of course, they created this own situation. It was their own fault. But all of a sudden, they didn't like it. They're very, very upset about it. Very upset. And they said in their hearts, and they said, look, Moshe is what's caused this. Moshe is going to cause us more problems. And the people said, we need a change. So it was a rebellion really coming. Korach was not necessarily leading the charge, but reflecting mood, taking an opportunity. He was an opportunist, reflecting the mood of the people, which was incredibly disappointed with Moshe, even though it was their own fault. And that was the space, there was space for Korach to argue on Moshe's actions. And that's where he thought, and he thought the people would listen to him then. And so therefore, he also agrees that these 250 men must have been the firstborn as well. So this is Ramban's explanation, was that it happened after the sin of the spies. Korach waited for the people to be disgusted with Moshe or to be unhappy, and that's when he used this opportunity to raise his coalition to try to attack Moshe at a time of Moshe's political weakness. Let me just pause for a moment, see if anybody has any questions before we turn to Rabbi Soloveitchik. I'd like to share one more source which goes to that question and says the rebellion of Korach is different from all the other complaints that had come before this. This is what Rabbi Soloveitchik says. Look, Rabbi Soloveitchik says the Korach rebellion was a unique event. Prior to it, the people complained and protested and murmured, but it was always in response to a physical need, a biological pressure, hunger or thirst, a primitive fear of an enemy, a malek, a serpent, or simply the wilderness itself. But there were no political disagreements with Moshe, no ideological controversies, no rebellions, only protests, complaints, quarrels, consequences of discomfort and hardship. They wanted water and food. They were afraid and protested. Even the golden calf episode was not precipitated by idolatrous ideas. Rather, was precipitated by the primitive, instinctual horror that befalls a lost sheep in wide open spaces. But now, all of a sudden, also, all the previous quarrels were unorganized, unplanned, spontaneous reactions. The quarrels were generated by a mob mentality. But now, what did Korach do? Rashi says, Vayikach Korach, he took others with him. In the beginning, he did not reveal anything to his prospective co-conspirators. But when the divine decree condemning the Jews to 40 years in the wilderness was announced, he thought of a golden opportunity and he revealed his plans to Datan, Aviram, and others. He attracted the heads of court with words by using clever and intelligent words. He began to conspire to criticize Moses, to attack and ridicule. He used all the weapons in his arsenal. In conversation with some, he was serious. In conversations with others, he was humorous. With some, he was a prosecutor. With others, the role of the champion of justice. So basically, what Korach was able to do was the people had everything. They were living They were living in luxury. They had all their physical needs met. They had their spiritual needs met. And yet Korach was able to plan a rebellion. That's what demagogues do. When the human nature is fundamentally where people were unhappy. That's why somebody once told me that everybody who's alive today is an optimist, is a pessimist, because the optimists all died. The optimists didn't leave Europe during the Shoah. The optimists don't leave when it's dangerous. The pessimists are the ones who survive. So Korach was able to find something and plan a rebellion, which was fundamentally different than everything else. And that was the danger of Korach. Okay, I want to stop here. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them, but I need to stop.